Today we will be interviewing Bill Rowe. Bill attended Purdue University, Fort Wayne, majoring in computer science. In 1983, he, along with others, started a new company, Tau Laboratories. It soon became the #1 photomask supplier in the U.S. and was subsequently purchased by DuPont and spun off as DuPont Photomask Incorporated. In 2007, Bill joined Purdue as a research engineer at Birck. Without further ado, I now present Bill Rowe, research engineer here at Birck, and our interviewer, Swati Shikha, second-year ECE master student and NSAC treasurer.
All right. Thank you, Mauricio. Yeah, let's start the session. Bill has 3 distinct parallel paths in his journey so far, be it working in the industry or being in the military or being at a university like Purdue. So let's delve deep into each of these details. So Bill, could you walk us through your professional journey so far from 1969 to how it led you to be at Purdue here with us?
Sure, be glad to. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. It's a pleasure. I enjoy working with the NSAC team. My work started at Jocelyn Stainless Steel in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I was a clerk there, an inventory control clerk, and it was my duty and goal to try and save them as much money as possible on the inventory of steel that we had. And it was an interesting place to work, a lot of heavy industry and things going on, but also that's when I first became very aware of safety in the workplace. My first day on the job, I walked by a large 55-gallon barrel that had a tattered flannel shirt in it. And I said to the person, "Oh, looks like somebody decided to throw their old shirt away." And they go, "No, there was an accident here last night." And I go, "Well, what do you mean?" One of the operators wasn't paying attention, and he was using big tongs to grab rod, which was red hot, and he was supposed to run it through the sizing machine, and it would roll it down to a smaller size, and someone on the other side would catch it, roll it over to the next one, shove it through, and then he would catch it. What happened, one of the blocks dropped down, and he shoved it in there and turned to talk to the person next to him, and the rod came back and burnt through his throat, through his chest, through his stomach, burnt his private parts off. And I was there for 9 months before I left for my basic training in the Army, and he was still not out of the hospital yet after 9 months. He was alive, but made me very aware of the dangers. Also at that stainless steel plant, we had 3 furnaces. We had 2 gas furnaces and a electric furnace, and those were basically big, huge vessels. The gas never made that much noise, but the electric furnace had 3 huge electrodes where they would lower with a crane those electrodes down into this vessel that had all the steel and material in there that they were going to melt to create whatever stainless steel types they wanted. And just from those electrodes and all the high current going through that, you would hear these explosions throughout the mill as this is melting all this cold metal. Unfortunately, one of our electricians at the time, about halfway through my tenure there, was working on that, and he was electrocuted. Several thousand amps went through him, and he died right there on the spot. So again, that was just a reminder to me about safety in the workplace. But it was an interesting place to work, but also very dangerous. When I was in the Army going through my basic training, I got a notice that there'd been a downturn in the steel industry, and I wouldn't have a job to return to. So I applied when I got back to Delco Electronics in Kokomo, and about a week later I got a reply, and they wanted me to come in for an interview, and I was chosen to go into their data processing area. And back then, it seems like the Stone Age now, but started off with some high-end equipment at the time, the IBM 370s. We had 2 of those, and we worked in teams. There were 3 people for each system, and one person would run the console one week, another person would go to the vault and pull tapes and hard disk packs, and the other person would load high-speed printers up with whatever paper was needed at the time. So we had 16 hard drives, 16 tape drives, and we had 8 high-speed printers. So it kept you busy your entire shift. A couple of years into that, an opening came up at our research and engineering plant at Delco Electronics, also located in Kokomo, and they needed someone who knew Fortran programming. And from my schooling at Purdue, I had learned Fortran, and so I was chosen to go there. And the machine there was an IBM 1130, and that was not as quite as high-tech as the IBM 370s, but I was told by the IBM service rep that we had the largest IBM 1130 in the country, and it had 32K of memory. Of course, most people's watches now have more than 32K of memory, and a lot of toys have more than 32K of memory, but back then that was sort of state-of-the-art equipment. And then in about 1974, then an opening came up in the photomask shop, and I had been doing work in the data processing area at the research and engineering building, which also housed the photomask shop. And I was loading data in and plotting out huge plots on a very large flatbed plotter of circuit designs. Once the engineers, they would take those plots, paste them up on the walls, and they would try circuit tracing on the walls. And it's much different today, of course, but back then everything was pretty much done by hand. Once they approved the design, then I would have to take large rolls of Rubylith, which is clear plastic with a red or orange coating on it, and replace the pens with knives. It would then go through and cut that circuit design, and then we would take it off there, and it would go upstairs to the mask shop, and they would pull out parts of the design so they'd have clear areas and dark areas. And so they decided that they really needed someone else up there, and they'd like to have me. So I left the data processing then and went to the photomask department. And it was a very good learning experience there, some good people to work with. There were 8 of us in the department, including our supervisor. And it was a very close-knit group of people, and we worked 2 shifts. And we dealt with primarily supplying photomasks for the different groups at Delco Electronics. They had a pilot line, they had the research and development facility, and then they also had the production lines. One of the things that always sort of baffled me, but they remedied down the road, was each group there had different pieces of equipment. And so we would take a design and make photomasks for the research and development group. Once they decided that, yes, they want to go on to the pilot line with this, we'd have to remake everything for the particular tool set that the pilot line had. Once the pilot line then determined that this was, they could make this work and in a production facility, then we had to remake for a 3rd time the design for the tool set that production had. And so we were always generating revisions of these designs and things like that. One of the interesting things that happened while we were there was cars started getting cruise controls, which we all sort of take cruise controls for granted right now. But Delco did not have the capacity to build all the cruise controls that were needed for General Motors, the circuits and all. So they contracted with Motorola for half of them also. Before these circuits actually went into production, they had to have life testing and all kinds of testing done at the research and engineering plant, and in order to go on to production. Once they started making these cruise controls and installing them in the GM cars and some Ford cars also, we contracted with Ford, there was a problem with some Cadillacs, where the Cadillac owner would pull up at, say, a toll booth back then, and they would have to put money in the toll booth. So of course you come rolling to a stop, dig your change out, and put it into the toll booth, and then take your foot off the brake, and the car then immediately thought you should be going 65 or 70 miles an hour, so it would burn rubber out of the toll booth and scare some people half to death. So then it became a problem as trying to identify which chip was in these particular Cadillacs. Was it Delco chips or was it Motorola chips? And so there was a lot of investigating going on, and they found it was Motorola chips were the problem. Then they had to determine, how do you determine which Cadillac has what chip in it? So this was sort of leading up to how things go now, where every car that has all these parts, they know exactly where they came from and what revisions they were, things like that. Back then, it was just new to everybody and was difficult to tell. But anyways, then at work, we were approached by a entrepreneur, Dr. Raymond Aoyang, and he was a researcher at IBM at their Poughkeepsie plant, and he always was very business oriented, and he was selling photomask blanks to us and other photomask suppliers. But where he sort of got his start, and this might apply to any one of a number of you young people that are going to be researchers or scientists or professors and maybe wanting to start your own business. He noticed that thought he could talk to IBM and see if they would give him all their sputtering equipment and let him hire people and maintain the equipment and sell them their photomask blanks at cost. And then whatever time he had available on the tools, he could build photomask blanks for sale on the outside. He also did this with IBM for their die sort operation also. He approached them and said, I've got a deal for you. What if you give me all your die sort equipment? I'll hire the people, train them, and I'll buy a building to put all this in, and we'll do all your die sort operation for you for cost, and then we can do other die sorts for other companies if needed. And he ended up buying an old grocery store and converting it and putting all the die sort equipment in there. And so that was sort of his entrepreneurial thought and that. And so he was coming to us to sell us photomask blanks. And he found out then at the time that technology was progressing and Delco Electronics was going to have to, in addition to the optical equipment, like in the poster here, the Electromask stepper, we had 3 steppers, 2 Electromask, 1 GCA 3696, and we had 2 optical pattern generators. They found that they needed to go to smaller feature sizes than what those machines were capable of, and so they were going to have to buy an E-beam. He approached Delco Electronics and said, hey, I've got a deal for you. Why don't you buy the E-beam, give it to me, and I'll build a facility. We'll put it in the facility. I'll staff it with people, and I'll give you all your photomasks and everything at cost. And then when we're not using the E-beam, we can use it to write for the outside. And so Delco Electronics thought that was a great deal. They didn't have any location at any one of their many plants that they had in Kokomo, Indiana that was capable of housing an electron beam. So they were going to have to build a new facility. So Dr. Ao Yang invited us, the department, to join Tau Laboratories, is what we named it. And the 8 of us left Delco Electronics to start up Tau Laboratories. So the building was constructed. It was about 2 miles away from the Delco Electronics main plants. And the optical equipment all came also. They gave us all the optical equipment. So we had to start up and seamlessly use the optical equipment to continue the supply of tooling for Delco. Then once we got the E-beam and got it up and running, and people trained on it, myself also, I was trained on it, and it was called a MEBUS, a Manufacturing Electron Beam System made by Perkin-Elmer. They're not made anymore, but we ended up just with one machine to start with, and back then E-beams were more expensive than they are right now, and these machines are not near as capable as anything we have right now. But it was about $4 million. And so we gradually tried to work that into...
Bill, let me ask a question right there.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So you mentioned that in your initial days, you saw major safety mishaps. You actually saw somebody getting electrocuted. Did that in any way make you wary of heavy electronics or heavy equipment?
No, just made me very wary of working on electronics.
Okay.
Yes, especially
Okay.
the high voltage stuff. Yes. Yeah, it was rather sad at the time that because he had a family also, and it was very sad. But
Okay.
yeah.
Also, so were you ever in two minds about your decision to start a new company with your peers, like leaving a secure job behind and starting a new venture? Did that ever occur to you that it might not go the way you would want it to?
That's a good question, Swati. Yes. And we were very lucky in that Delco Electronics said, look, here's what we'll do. We'll give you a safety net. If any of you 8 people want to come back to Delco Electronics at any time within the next year, you can come back, no questions asked. Your seniority will be restored and you will have a job.
Okay.
So that was rather unusual, but we were very thankful for that safety net. None of the 8 of us returned to Delco Electronics. We all stayed with the Tau Laboratories. Yeah, and they were also very good that while we were transitioning, they were allowing us to bring some of the new employees into Delco Electronics and train them. So when we got completely moved, we would be able to hit the ground running. So we sort of grew from the 8 people to, I believe, the highest number of employees we had at our place was about 150 employees. Okay. But it was very interesting, a lot of hard work. But today, even when I bump into some of the former employees, they always have the same thing to say. They say it was the best job they'd ever had, even though they're in different careers now. But a couple of the things that maybe keep in mind, you know, if you're going out starting a company in that, was that we always had goals in the business, and to quality and performance and delivery, and we also had an emphasis on safety also. The photomask industry is not as hazardous as the wafer fabs and that. We didn't have the hazardous gases, and we had some sulfuric acid and hydrochloric acid and chromic acid and things like that, but no BOE, no HF. So Yeah, so it was pretty not as safe. I mean, still dangerous, but we even had one of our employees who was probably the most capable chemistry person bringing in some sulfuric acid one time, and the bottle slipped from her hand, and we didn't have double containment, and it broke on the floor. And so the first thing she did was reach for wipes and threw the wipes on the sulfuric acid. So they start turning brown, start crumpling up, and start smoking. We're going to have a fire. And she just panicked. But so I guess that always embedded in me that in panic situations, even though you know what you're doing, the right thing to do, you may panic and not do the right thing. So I always sort of worry about that here with HF and BOE exposures too. We know what to do, but it can be very hazardous.
I mean, we are given very extensive trainings how to deal with HF or BOE exposures, and all of them are accompanied with horrifyingly gruesome pictures. If you're not careful, you could be this person.
Yes, yes, very dangerous. But
so, Bill, one more question.
Sure.
So you mentioned from 8 people, you grew to about 150 people. So did that change the nature of the company from knowing each and every one of your employees to having new people in your fold?
Yes, there was a lot of training going on. And for me, starting out, I had to train new operators. I had to train new engineers. I had to maintain equipment and things like that. So I got to do a variety of things. Along the way, we did some work with Purdue University, and there was a young fellow at Purdue that would come over to our place from time to time and pick up some work and that. His name was Tim Miller. And so back when I joined here, there's Tim. We're working together again. And also another person, Mark Voris, was hired. And he was working one evening after he had been trained on a piece of equipment, and he dropped a bunch of glass off the back of the machine, and it broke, and he thought for sure he was going to get fired. And
it's nice to know that the current experienced Birck staff also made mistakes once upon a time.
Yes. Also, while we were at Delco Electronics and for a little while at Tau Laboratories Net, we dealt with another person, some of you may remember, John Weaver. And he was doing some designs at Delco Electronics, so we worked with him. And then he got pulled off to design their new wafer fab. And he also then had a lot of input with Birck Technology, Birck plant here. So John, was very good at design and layout and very much into the facility end of things. But so there are 3 people there that interacted with that ended up meeting up with here at Birck again. So that was good. But we did expand then at the plant in Kokomo. We stayed at about 140 to 150, and it was more like a family. And but we did have problems from time to time. People would always want more money and that, but in the end, most people stayed with us. One of the things that happened, I remember that I wasn't prepared for. I had an employee call in and say they were going to kill themselves. They were going to commit suicide.
Oh my God, okay.
It was just, she was a single parent, had a 14-year-old daughter who was very unruly and doing things that teenagers do, and then trying to support her and the work and everything. And plus, she probably drank a little more than she should. And but it ended up, was able to talk her down and get her back, get her the help she needed, and get her back at work. And so that was a good thing, but nothing would have really prepared me for that. Also, I had an employee we hired from Michigan, and he worked at the largest cattle farm in Michigan. and he very excellent, really sharp guy, excellent. And about a year after we hired him, he was standing outside the office I had, and his eyes were all red. I could tell he'd been crying, and so I was concerned that everything was okay with him, with his family, and that. And so we sat down to talk, and he says, "Do you remember me telling you about the cattle ranch?" And I go, "Yeah, I sure do. I remember how much you loved it there." And he goes, "Well, the owners have called me back and want me to come back, and they want me to computerize things so we can track the cattle, we can track their feed, we can track all kinds of things, and I'll still get to ride horses and corral cattle." And I was just so happy for him that he was going to be doing something he really loved, and he was worried that we would be upset with him. But personally, I was so happy that he was going to be doing something every day that he really enjoyed doing.
So unprecedented situations are a part and parcel of life.
Yeah, it's a good feeling to know that, you know, you met somebody and they were able to go on and do something they really loved. But from, you know, just those 150 people we dealt with and that at our place, we also then in the DuPont era, we ended up building a plant in Incheon, Korea. And when DuPont bought us, we had a little party, and we had cake and ice cream to celebrate that we're going to be DuPont and photomass and that. And it was nice. And Dr. Raymond Aoyang was very appreciative for all the hard work everyone put in to become #1 in the country, and then DuPont purchasing us. But after that, then we built a plant in Round Rock, Texas, which Mark Voris ended up going to. Then we also built a plant in Incheon, Korea. A couple of years later, we bought one of our competitors, Ultratech, in Santa Clara, California. There, the owner of that company had, I believe, 5 people that had been with him pretty much from the start of his company. And so they were very valued employees and stuck with him through thick and thin. And so at their party, they had cake and ice cream also. But he asked for those 5 people to come forward, and he wanted to thank them for all their hard work and putting his company in a position where they could be bought by DuPont. I don't know what DuPont paid for Ultratech. I know for our plant, they paid $40 million. But this owner then, he said, "I have a little gift for you as a gift of my appreciation." And he handed each one of those 5 people an envelope, and inside was a check for $1 million each.
Okay.
So some of our people were a little upset that we didn't get anything. We got cake and ice cream, but I thought, well, you know, we were paid to do a job, and we did the job, did it well, and so this fellow was very appreciative, and his people there were very lucky that he was going to share $1 million apiece with them. He said, "I'm already a millionaire, so here, I want to share this with you." So that was great that he did that. We also went on to purchase a plant in Nijmegen in the Netherlands, in the south of France in Rousset, and we also built 2 plants in Shanghai, China. And we built a plant also in Beaverton, Oregon, which Fujitsu was going to build a plant there also. So we decided to build a plant there to be close to Fujitsu. And so we built our plant, and Fujitsu canceled their plans for their plant. So our plant never really got utilized at all. The last plant we built was in Dresden, Germany, and it was a state-of-the-art plant. And so we had gone from the original 8 employees to about 2,400 employees worldwide. So it was always interesting interfacing and working with some of the other people at some of the other plants around the world. Some of our employees got to go to those plants and help them get started and things like that. Especially, we purchased a software package that's was, I guess it'd be like iLabs now. It seemed to be a little more powerful than iLabs, but back in the mid 80s or late 80s, it was sort of advanced for its time. But here, I believe we pay for iLabs as a percentage of the money we bring in and that. But there, with this company, it was $50 million up front. So we sort of went from struggling early on and getting equipment and things like that to
a lot of diversification.
Yes, a lot of diversification, and nothing's cheap in the semiconductor industry.
Agreed.
But
and then,
yep, go ahead.
Yeah. So, how did you decide to join Purdue again in 2007? That is the part I'm particularly curious about.
Okay, yes. In 2004, well, DuPont had spun us off in 1996 as DuPont Photomass, and initially in '86 they wanted to diversify, and so they were looking around for companies to buy, and some research group came and said we were a good buy. So we were with DuPont then for 10 years, and in 1996 they decided that they needed to focus on their core businesses. So they sold off Conoco Oil. They sold off, one of the Seagrams, I believe it is. Yeah, Seagrams. They sold off Seagrams, and they sold off several other companies, and they spun us off on our own then also. So from '96, we were DuPont Photomass, and then in 2004, they decided that there was a too much capacity in the photomask industry, and so they started shutting down plants. And by then, our headquarters in the U.S. had moved from Kokomo to Round Rock, Texas. And so they decided to shut the Kokomo plant down in late 2004. And Toppan in Japan bought DuPont Photomass and shut our facility down and kept the Round Rock plant and the Santa Clara plant open. I believe they realized a year or so later that they shut the wrong plant down, but because in Kokomo things are fairly cheap, it would cost $3 million a year to keep that plant open. The plant in Santa Clara was it was actually like within a warehouse kind of facility, so it was sort of a makeshift clean room kind of thing and everything, and it cost $9 million a year to keep that plant open. And so we never could figure out how they're going to make up $6 million, but anyways, it happened, and so they gradually let people go there at DuPont, and that's then I ended up joining Delphi Electronics for a short while, and then ended up Purdue was looking for someone familiar with e-beams, and so I interviewed for the job and was chosen to join Purdue University then at the new Birck Nanotechnology Center.
So you've been at Purdue for a full 13 years now. How do you think Birck has evolved in this time?
Yes, it's grown quite a bit, not only equipment-wise, a lot of amazing equipment here, and a lot of money has been spent from the initial startup and that, and it's been maintained very well by Mark Voris and the people. I've seen the staff has really grown also. We, of course, have a larger staff now than back then, but a lot of excellent engineers, staff. I'm always really impressed by the people I work with and their talents in that. with electronics, chemistry. They're just very, very bright people to work with, and the good resources also. And of course, a lot of the professors are very good working with us also, and have a myriad of information and that to pass on to us and help. And oh my goodness, the students, you guys, just tremendous. I'm so impressed by the quality of the students that come through here, and I'm always interested in the students too, and in what they're going to do, you know, after they get their PhDs and move on. And it's always interesting, you know, because some want to go into research, some want to go into academia, and some want to maybe start their own companies. So it's a lot. It's interesting to hear. One of our current students, I know he was talking that one of the things he wanted to do was to go back to his home country and try and help people there become more educated and show what you can do, what you can accomplish in that. And I just think that's so great that meeting with people from different parts of the world and everything, and what they're going to do. It's sort of a melting pot here, and I enjoy that very much, finding out what life's like for them back home. And one of the young ladies here, I was asked her where she was from, and she said Bhopal. And of course, first thing that came to my mind in Bhopal was the big Union Carbide disaster. They had the world's largest
gas.
Yeah, the release of gas, and what killed about 6,000 people, and who knows how many more lingered on and died after that. But luckily her family was fine, and she was fine. Of course, that happened quite a few years ago before she was born. But yeah, but it's just amazing that some of the people we have coming through here and what their life was like. So I've been very happy about working here and enjoyed it so much, and I think especially working with the students.
So does interacting with students or training them, do you think it takes away from your primary role as a researcher?
No, I see that that is one of my goals or duties also. And so every day when we come in, you know, we try and schedule what we can for our trainings and all, but we also have equipment responsibilities also to try and get those up and running, or maybe we have had an installation to do that. So we sort of have to balance things, and sometimes that's difficult because usually everybody wants trained as soon as possible, and but if you've got a piece of equipment that's down that everybody wants up right away also, it's challenging sometimes, let's say. But we work through it, and like I say, we've got an excellent group of engineers and a talented group that can usually get things up and running pretty quickly.
So yeah, it was a very interesting journey. I mean, starting from Jocelyn Stainless Steel to Purdue University, I mean, spanning multiple decades.
Yes.
So yeah. Let's move on to the next phase then. Yeah, tell me more about your military experience. So you were in the Army National Guard for a solid 39 years. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, I started off went to Fort Ord, California, which is by Monterey and Carmel, just about 100 miles south of San Francisco. So if the Army had to have a nice place, that was it. They still had plenty of sand and things like that, but it was a good experience there at Fort Ord. So I was there for over 6 months. And then when I came back, that was infantry training. And when I came back then, initially to Fort Wayne, I would have to go to my drills in Auburn, Indiana, which was about 45 miles north of Fort Wayne. Then I would jump in a Jeep and drive to southern Indiana to Camp Atterbury, and then for the weekend, and then on the way back on Sunday, I'd drive right by Fort Wayne, go to Auburn, clean up the Jeep and put equipment away, and then drive back to Fort Wayne. When I ended up getting a job at Delco Electronics in Kokomo, I got tired of going from Kokomo to Auburn to Camp Atterbury to Auburn to Kokomo. So it pretty much chewed up the whole weekend. And so I transferred to the artillery unit in Kokomo, Indiana. And I was with them for a couple years, and they brought on air defense. And so I was in a group that was in the air defense section there, and we were sent to Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas for red-eye missile training. And it was a shoulder-fired missile, is what you see in this top slide here, and that was at the White. No, that's not me. That's just a stock photo there. But training there was some of the best I've ever had, whether it was in industry or academia or military. Part of the training then was to identify aircraft as to enemy or friendly, and they had a big theater there. Now we would consider that an IMAX theater. Back then, no one knew what IMAXs were in the mid-'70s, but they had one there, and no theater seats in it or anything, just bleachers, and you had 180 degrees around you, above and down to the floor, and 180 from side to side, and a voice from the back would say, "Sergeant Rowe, what do you want?" And you could say, "Give me Hong Kong on July 5th at 8 p.m. in the evening." Boom, there it was.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you had to listen for an aircraft, and you had to find this aircraft by looking all around you, and then you had to identify whether it was a friendly aircraft or a enemy aircraft. And many times you used this trainer, which was similar to what this soldier has there, but it didn't fire a missile, of course, but it would let you know whether it picked up enough infrared from the plane to be able to shoot it down or not. And so many times after you go through these exercises, you would hear this, "Congratulations, Sergeant Rowe, you just shot down one of America's finest fighting pilots." But so that was very interesting. And then they would also truck us out to the White Sands Proving Grounds, and we also had our trainers, and they had jet aircraft from the Marines that would come in and fly over us. And even though when they first come in, they want to let you know that they're there. So they come in at about 350 miles an hour over the top of you, about 50 feet above you. And there's nothing quite like the feeling of the ground shaking and this incredible noise and feeling all the backblasts from these jet engines as they go over the top of you. But then in about 1975, my enlistment was coming up, and I had some friends that decided to check out the band. Okay. I didn't know there was a band, and I played tuba. So we all went down and checked out the band, and 3 of us from the Kokomo area ended up joining the band, and that's where I remained then for the remainder of my military career. And so got to travel around the Midwest playing for parades and ceremonies, things like that. The photograph you see here of this brass quintet plus the percussion was actually taken here at the Armory at Purdue. We were playing for a ceremony there. So it was a lot of great people, and really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so let's talk more about music. How long have you been playing the tuba?
Since about 1961, I believe.
And do you play it professionally?
Yeah, some jobs I get paid for, some I don't. It just varies. It's a lot of times it's playing for the community, returning, doing things for the community. And the top photograph there, I'm playing at a 5K race, and just providing some entertainment and some music for them with a brass quintet. And down below, that was after one of the concerts in Kokomo. with the Kokomo band, Kokomo Park Band, and the three tuba players were all sitting there and posed for a photograph, and we're all playing our big horns. We all brought our biggest tubas with us that night, and so, but played in military bands, many brass quintets, brass ensembles, brass bands, wind bands. And there's a little asterisk there that there is a concert coming up this Saturday at 2 p.m. at the Palladium in Carmel with the Indiana Wind Symphony. So there aren't many concerts going on, but the Palladium was big enough that we could socially distance, and not all of us are on the stage. The winds or woodwinds are mostly on the stage, and the brass are up above them in the choir area, all spaced out 6 feet. So it's we're all glad to be playing again. Also play in a couple different symphony orchestras, Dixieland bands, and street fair bands. So it's been a sort of an avocation, something I enjoy, and enjoy making music with other people. It's sort of like a team. You know, here we have teams, or at work you may have a team, and your group, with your professor, may be considered a team, and everybody pulling together in the right direction. And music is that way too. Everybody trying to do their best and work together.
When I first read your biography, that was the thing that I was most amazed by. Oh, I did not know somebody at Birck played the tuba. So since we are running a little short in time, let me collate some of the questions that our audience has also posed.
All right.
So you have had a very diverse career. You have worked in the industry, you have been in the army, and now you also interact with students. So out of all your different roles, which do you find the most challenging, and which do you think is the most fulfilling?
The most challenging is probably work here, with trying to balance everything and keep up with technology. You know, here with the research, we're always pushing technology, so it's always a challenge to keep up with it. Yeah. So the challenges earlier in work were meeting goals that we had set, and so it was a little different. Not really advancing the technology that much and doing research, but production. At our highest point, we were doing off the E-beams 40 24-hour turns a day, and that was always very stressful. But that's in part why we became #1 in the United States after only like a year and a half. The other competitors thought there was a downturn in the photomask industry, but what it was those semiconductor plants were sending us their designs to make for them and return back to them. We could actually do it quicker than they could, even though they were just down the street from the semiconductor plant. They could get it quicker from us being here in the Midwest than what they could get it, even though they're just down the street. So those were always challenges.
Okay. And which do you think was the most fulfilling role out of all of these?
Oh boy, that's difficult to say because they're so diverse. Each one had its own special memories in that, but so it's hard to choose just one because they are so diverse.
Okay. If you had to pick one, where would you put your money on?
Well, right now I'd say working here at Birck, Purdue.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm glad you like working with us too.
Oh yeah.
So on that note, you attended Purdue back in the 60s, and you are once again here. How do you think Purdue ideologically, or in terms of the interaction between students and professors or students and staff, do you see a major shift in what Purdue was to what Purdue is today?
Yeah, it is a little different. Now you have to realize too, I was at the Purdue University at Fort Wayne, and I don't know if you've had a chance to visit that campus now, but it's really amazing what has gone on there. When I went there, there was one main building, that was it. They had a lot of acreage along the river, along the St. Joe River, and but it was just one building. And back then, if we were doing programming in that, we had to log on to the Purdue main campus CDC 6500 to run our jobs. We had no standalone computers there. We always had to log on remotely to the CDC 6500. It was nice because probably smaller classes in that, and we never really had any real large lecture groups like you see here. So some things were definitely different there than what they are here right now. But that campus has really grown, and it's beautiful, and I always enjoy going by there and just taking a drive through whenever I'm back up that way visiting friends and family. I know one thing, I did also take a couple of courses at IUK and the Purdue part in Kokomo also. They had a very small Purdue representation, but one thing I found out from one of my colleagues who was taking some classes at IUK, one of the professors there, I'd never heard this from any professor, but his professor told him and the class that he wrote his name up on the board and say, "I'm Professor such and such. If you see me out of this classroom, if you see me out at the grocery store, if you see me out shopping, if you see me out at the park, do not speak to me. I will not talk to you. I will not talk to you. If you need to talk to me, make an appointment. That's the only way I'm going to talk to you." And I thought, gee, that's, I just didn't quite, harsh. I didn't understand that. And I've never met any professors here that had that kind of an attitude or anything, but I'll have to say that was probably an IU professor. So hope I didn't offend anybody that's IU related there.
Oh, you're good, don't worry. So one of our audience has asked, what was it like working across the globe in different countries?
It was interesting for our people. Initially, I was involved. Instead of us sending people to Korea to the Icheon plant, we brought people to Kokomo. So I was able to host some Koreans and do some training here. And again, it was interesting finding out what life was like for them and their families and their children and the work also. Also, we had, when we built the 2 plants in Shanghai, China, several people were able to go there, and hearing some of their stories when they came back, it was interesting. They had great hosts there for them and everything, but we had one fellow that I'm not sure why they sent him there. He was 40 years old. And they sent him to Shanghai, China, and he was with a couple other people that went, but he had never had rice in his life.
Okay.
And so they would, of course, host them and take them out to dinner or lunch, and he would just sit there. He wouldn't eat because he didn't want to eat anything. So the restaurants would have to send somebody down to a McDonald's to buy him a burger and bring it back. And I thought, why are you sending this guy there? He shouldn't be there. But the other people who were there really enjoyed their time and made a lot of good friends with the people in Shanghai. We also did some collaborations with a company in Japan. There were 3 main blank manufacturers and photomask suppliers in Japan: Topan Photomask, Hoya, and Dynapon. And we were doing some collaborations with Dynapon, and we thought we were pretty hot in Kokomo, having 4 e-beams at the time. So we had about $25 million worth of e-beams sitting on the floor. And the fella from Dynapon, I asked him, I said, well, how many E-beams do you have at your facility? And he goes, 37. 37 E-beams, all in one
37
facility.
E-beams. Oh, wow.
All in one facility. He says pretty much
That's impressive. Uh-huh.
We pretty much have an engineer assigned to every beam.
Mm-hmm.
That was sort of eye-opening too.
All right, so let me close with one final question. Since you like interacting with students, what is that one advice you would want to give to the future researchers or current researchers at Birck?
I think a couple things that I've known just taken from my career was the people that I interacted with early on. Now we've also all met up here again at Purdue. And those collaborations or contacts that you make early on may help you later on in life also. And so it's always good to remember some of those people and what you were doing and interacting with them, and also trying to work together as a team to help each other. I feel our jobs here as engineers here to help the students, and whether it's with equipment and processes or training and things like that, to try and make them successful. So try and make the people around you successful.
So networking and teamwork, they're both very important.
Absolutely. Okay. Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, thank you for talking to us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Appreciate it.